Hello and welcome once again to the High Performance Human Podcast. It's your man Andy here, and I'm with a guy who I've been following for a wee while. At first, made me feel quite bad about myself because he was achieving ridiculous amounts and he's younger than me, which made me feel a little bit bad as to how much talent I could be wasting. But then, what I've soon come to discover is Jack Delosa is a guy with a value set, with a skill set, with a mindset that completely merits the success that he has, and completely vindicates it and justifies it in every single which way. Jack, an absolute pleasure to have you on, man. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Andy. Great to be here, man.
There is so much that we're going to have a bit of a yarn through and whatnot. Like I said, I'm not joking. When I first came across you, it was interesting because it was at a time in my life, which I haven't shared with you yet, that I really hit the wall with depression. That's right. It was actually in 2015 that I got diagnosed and started on the journey of mental health and that walk down mental health lane and all that sort of stuff. And I was basically clambering. I was scouring the internet for any semblance of hope at one point, right? I was watching some bloody American Christian pastor. I was watching all sorts of things, people, anyone to give me some sort of hope or reason to exist at one stage, right? I stumbled across you when I was going through one of those phases that when I was in a job that I was doing well at, really didn't like. Felt like I'd been wasting my life and my career, and I was trying to find some way to develop myself and whatnot. And you started hitting my stream and my feed. One thing that has always impressed me about you is the fact that, unlike a lot of people, and we talked about this off camera, there's a lot of people that flatter to deceive. The laugh tells 1,000 words. But you, man, there is no doubt as to who you are. And there's no doubt as to how you go about your game and how you run your life. And the first thing I wanted to say to you was, firstly, a thank you more than anything else for, one, having the balls to do it, but having a belief in yourself that is an example that a lot of other people can follow, which is probably one of the reasons why you started the Entourage in the first place, right? And I'll come on to that later. Before we get into the meat and veg of the episode, though, I want to ask you the one quick question. Why? And why or how did you even discover this sort of thing in yourself that put you in a position of, without trying to make people vomit in the mouths, a position of inspiration? Did you mean to do that?
No. The why and the how for me is it's fundamentally who I am, and I can sort of elaborate on that in a moment. But the other piece of that is when you say it's who I am, it's some people misconstrue that to mean that, okay, therefore it's come easy. And so it's fundamentally who I am. And I have a very high work ethic, and I have a high tolerance for pain and discomfort. And so I've been able to sustain, I've been in business for almost 20 years now. I've been able to sustain some pretty high ups and some very low lows. Because truthfully, for me, there's no alternative to doing what I'm doing. And so what else is there to do for me?
Yeah. Would there be any idea? Would you have any idea of what you could do?
If I wasn't doing what I'm doing? No. And that probably sounds like an intellectually lazy answer, but it's something that I've thought about. We've gone through some incredibly excruciatingly difficult periods in business, and the reason why I don't quit is because all I want to do is what I'm doing, and I I can't imagine, nor would I want to imagine doing anything else. And so where a lot of this comes from, when I say, Andy, that this is who I am, when I was a very young boy, probably the age of 4, my parents ran a not-for-profit organisation called Breaking the Cycle. And so they take what the government would call long-term unemployed youth, which is really youth who are at serious risk of a whole bunch of negative things happening in their life. They take them out of jail, they take them out of abusive homes, they take them off the street, they put them through training and coaching programs, and they'd facilitate them into employment. And because they could only take a finite number of young adults each year, they deliberately choose the people from the most challenged of backgrounds. And even though they purposefully chose the people with the most challenged of backgrounds, they were the most successful at what they did in the country, right? And so Mum was the head teacher, Dad was the managing director. And so I grew up in Mum's classroom as she taught life skills and personal development and psychology and employability skills and all of that sort of stuff. The other thing with Breaking the Cycle is they were a not-for-profit organisation. And so it's probably 5 or 6 years in, when I was probably about 11 years of age, the government restructured the way they issued capital out to not-for-profits. Breaking the Cycle was unsuccessful under the new regime. And so the organisation collapsed. And so that's where I get my deeply commercial side from. Breaking the Cycle taught me that what I want to do, while I'm here, is develop meaningful organizations that do important things. But I want them to be commercially successful and sustainable so that we can attract the best talent in the world, so that we can have conversations like this, so that we can, get on the front foot around PR and marketing, and we can amplify our message because we stand on a commercial foundation. Yeah. And so when you ask who I am, it's a really interesting blend, because I am an entrepreneur, and I'm a thoroughbred, deep in my DNA entrepreneur, but I'm kind of coming at the game from a slightly different perspective to some.
To most,
yeah,
I would have thought. Well, you can see it, and that's where, and I really like that you've made that distinction. Because you're right. When people say it's who I am, it's in my DNA. It's people think that it does come easy to those people that are just got it, for want of a better word, right? But I love that the distinction that you made, whereby you've had to work your arse off to get to that point, and you will continue to work your arse off because of the fact that you are pot committed emotionally, mentally. You are all in on it.
That's 100% true.
And I think that's probably part of the issue that a lot of people tend to have is and again, speaking from my own personal battle scars, being sort of one foot in one camp, one foot in another camp, another foot somehow in a third camp, and what have you, really does prevent people from chasing, from really going gun ho in terms of what they want to do. There's a couple of other things that we'll unpack in there, but first things first, I've got to ask a couple of questions. There'll be a whole load of people that already know who you are through all your for all the great work you've done. But for those that don't know who you are, give us a quick elevator spiel on Jack Delosa, who you are, and what got you to this point.
Well, the grounding in my childhood and in Breaking the Cycle, I think, was probably the most formative component of, the nature component of how I was developed, if you like, and how I was built. I mean, shortly after Breaking the Cycle, if you had spoken to me when I was a teenager, I would have told you I wanted to be a politician, because all I wanted to do from the age of 4 or 5 was have some sort of positive or important influence. And at a young age, you think that's what politicians do, and then you learn that politicians don't really do anything other than stifle innovation and put in place short-sighted things that often has a negative impact, if anything else. And so shortly after that, I realized that it truly is entrepreneurs that shape the world. And so I got busy making myself into an entrepreneur. To your point earlier around being pot committed and, me kind of having found my path, it wasn't always like that. At 18, my first business was a marketing agency in Melbourne. Why? Because I'd worked in a call center just to earn some dollars while I was in high school.
Yeah.
My managers left to start their own business. I reached out to them and said, "What are you guys doing?" And they said, "Come be our partner." And so I had this opportunistic thing where I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what business was. I didn't know how to start. But I did know I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and so I was going to take pretty much the first opportunity that sort of showed itself.
Yeah.
And that was it. And did I like, running call centers and deploying marketing campaigns for businesses? No. But I did it because that was my apprenticeship, and I dropped out of a comm law degree to do it. And so I think that the lessons there are, firstly, there is no kind of one path or one purpose for everybody. Some people are multi-passionate and multi-dimensional. I'm not, but many people are, right? And so it doesn't need to be about finding that one thing. But if you want to get closer to finding what lights you up and finding what's meaningful to you, you have to be willing to start experimenting with a whole bunch of stuff that is not going to be meaningful to you in order to, firstly, develop your skills and capabilities and experience, but more importantly, find what you do like and what you don't like to move towards and ultimately find, one or two paths that really resonate with you. So again, it does come back to the willingness to start, the willingness to be uncomfortable, the willingness to suck at first, and the willingness to try things knowing full well that you're not going to enjoy a lot of them, but that's the lesson that will move you closer towards the things that you do enjoy.
Yeah.
I mean, from my story perspective, I ultimately went into business, and that's been my path for the last 20 years.
Now, there's so many questions to come off the back of that. Now, loads. I was like, now, one question that I have to ask all of our guests is: I've got this belief that there are 4 elements that go into a high performance human: being success, connection, influence, and happiness. I ask all of our guests what their definition of a high performance human is. Jack Delosa, what's your definition?
To me, high performance is simply something you do, and it is what you're doing in alignment with your long-term goals and vision that you hold for yourself and your life. And so let's kind of unpack that a little bit. I think it's really important to develop an understanding of who you are, and and that's there's so much talk of passion and purpose. Like you hit with this lightning bolt, and all of a sudden, all your dreams come true, and you never question anything ever
like
again.
A lamp.
yeah. It's like, where's the lamp? And it's just not reality, right? And so, developing a vision for yourself and your life is again usually comes out of doing all the work, and from the detail arises a vision. And then secondly is getting busy in service of that. I do not think high performance is something you can think your way into.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an intellectual exercise. I don't think, I'm clearly a huge proponent of personal development, and, I've been studying psychology for over 30 years now. So like the vast majority of my life. And it's such a fundamental piece of who I am. But I've always coupled it with work and practicality. And so, I think it's about it's important to not over-intellectualize one's own high performance or one's own values, or get a good kind of understanding of it, get to work, and through the detail, through the mundane, through the execution will arise vision. And through all of that, hopefully you'll get better. If your North Star is there in the beginning, you'll be swerving all over the place. And the ideal is to become less wrong over time.
Yep, becoming less wrong over time. Stick that in your notes. 100%. Becoming less wrong over time. What an amazing little phrase. Now, I wanted to dig into what you just said before, a few sentences ago, about how... and we mocked it about, you find your passion and purpose, and all of a sudden the genie comes out of the lamp. One of the big misconceptions when it comes to successful people is the fact that their passion is just so there is such a fire within them for their passion that it was undeniable. It was inevitable that they were going to end up making squillions of dollars off it and things like that. The reality, and I'm sure you will have seen this countless times in your with the Entourage and everything that you do, that there will be loads of people that have incredible passions, but the commercial aspect, the practical aspect of it is such that, is it going to give them a sustainable life? Is it going to give them sustainability and real sort of predictability in their lives with regards to income, revenue, so on and so forth, right? And it's just not going to happen. Talk around this passion piece, because you've mentioned that there was only ever one thing that you were going to do, and you know that you're fortunate that that's what you found, and you found it early on. It took me God knows how many years to work out in a mental breakdown to sort of kind of half discover mine. And also, like you said, the line is very squiggly as you head towards your North Star. Talk to me about this thing, this misconception that goes around the internet like wildfire, that you got to follow your passion, follow your passion, follow your passion, follow your passion. And for a lot of people, that just ends up leading to despair.
Yes.
Whether it's financially, whether it's emotional breakdown, because that's what they believe, that they follow their passion, it's going to be that's their North Star, but it ends up not being so.
Yes.
Talk to that for a bit, because I know that you, like I said, you will have experienced it, you will have seen it in countless examples. For those people that are stuck and struggling to find their passion, you talked about just trying and testing and finding your way through eventually. How can people take a passion that is not necessarily something that's going to be the be all and end all, but then utilize a component of it to actually get something that is sustainable for them?
Yeah, there's a few things there, so let's touch on each of them. Mate, I'm just going to pause there for a second, because there was a path that I wanted to go down, and just as you asked the question, it completely. Yeah, you want to fix something? What before you rounded out the question? What were you saying in between there?
I was talking about how a lot of people.
The internet, and we're watching the internet and becoming despair. Yeah, great. Okay, cool. I'm back on. Sweet. I'm just trying to remember how you phrased the question. How do we find our passion? How do you
utilize your passion?
Yep.
If it's not practically possible for that to become your sustainable career, how do you utilize your passion to actually put something together that makes your life more meaningful, basically?
So let's address what you first discussed in terms of, on the internet and social media, we're bombarded with this passion and this purpose and who I am, who am I, and all of this kind of stuff. We unquestionably are living in a culture that is over-therapized. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that a lot of people, and I believe one of the core drivers of this is social media and the internet, are living with such a high degree of self-obsession, masquerading as virtue or seeking my passion or whatever it might be. And so if all we're ever thinking about is ourselves and how we're feeling, and am I happy right now, and I should be happy all the time, am I in my passion right now, and is my health optimal, and is all the aspects of my life optimal? We see people on social media, and they wake up in the morning and they will eat some, organic food, and then they'll have an ice bath, and then they'll have a sauna, and then they'll meditate for 30 minutes, and then they'll go to the gym, and then they do some postural exercises, because apparently that's important as well, and by the time, we're now 4 or 5 hours into your day, you've utilized all of your intellectual and physical energy on trying to stave off all of these scary things that you think are coming to, tear apart your life. And it's almost celebrated on social media.
Oh, you're so right.
And now I want to qualify this, because it is a nuanced discussion. I have routines. I am a meditator. I believe in personal development, but for a purpose and to an end, not for its own sake. And so I do not sit around all day thinking about how is Jack feeling. And you can look at previous generations, and they're really good examples of this. There's some amazing entrepreneurs that you can look at. They didn't have the luxury of the endless self-examination that we do.
Yep.
And so what did they do? They woke up, they put their boots on, they went to fucking work, and they achieved great things. And there's a lot to be said for that. Now, were they deeply emotionally rounded and fulfilled? There's another part of the coin there that I think is also important to integrate. But that's the word, is it's about how do we best integrate the two rather than becoming obsessed with the fantasy and the rumination of intellectualizing purpose and passion and how do I be my optimal self. Again, I think it comes back to, I run a podcast, Andy. We both do a lot of this sort of stuff. But my number one advice is like, turn the fucking podcast off, turn YouTube off, delete Instagram from your phone, try and develop some sense of who you are, understanding that in the immediate term you will be hopelessly wrong, and that's okay. And then start to work in a way that's directionally accurate to where you think you want to go, and fail forward and learn through experience.
Yep.
That's the teacher. Experience in life is the best teacher. Yes, there's something to be offered through personal development and psychology and all of the kind of stuff we're discussing. The rubber hits the road when you do. So, put the boots on and go to work.
I'm so glad that you've brought this into the equation for this conversation. I'm so glad, because the theorizing of all of this is just sickening. So if I take my own trip with the mental health side of things, one thing that is preventing mental illness from becoming normalized in society, like a broken leg, or a strained wrist or whatever. One thing that is preventing it from becoming normalized is the fact that everybody is too busy theorizing over it and not even remotely thinking about the practicalities.
Right.
Putting a framework around how you can still progress, move forward, be successful. Whilst understanding that you might have mental health issues or challenges or whatever.
Yes.
It was one thing that I actually said in a seminar, a mental health seminar, because someone was carrying on about this, that, or the other. And I said, believe it or not, the sun's coming up tomorrow.
Yeah.
And he owned a business, said, your business is going to need to open its doors tomorrow. Your kids are going to need fed tomorrow.
Right.
There's practicalities to life that none of us can avoid.
Right.
And it goes exactly hand in hand with what you just said there.
Yeah.
There's this perception that you have to. I had this conversation with she's just got a doctorate in human behaviors and whatnot. Dr. Sarah Bell, ridiculously intelligent chick, incredible human being, such a cool chick. And we had a part of our conversation where we talked about the prefix self, because I did a little bit of homework and saw that the use of the word self is correlated to the increase in depression, mental health issues and whatnot.
Yes.
Because tying what you said about self-obsession, we're not designed to be self. We're not designed to be individual cells, right?
Yeah.
And the reality of how we are wired and operated and so on and so forth, we could theorize till kingdom come.
Yeah.
But until we put one foot in front of the other,
right,
nothing's going to get better.
100%.
Nothing's going to get better.
100%. And to that point, Andy, it's a really good point. When we talk about, you courageously shared earlier your experience of 2015, and I've been through some. I've had a brother that's passed away. I've been through some really, really rough years in business for extended periods of time. There are periods where therapy is not only useful, but in many instances critical.
Oh,
right, and I'm guessing we've both
got the T-shirt on that one.
We've got the T-shirt, and we've experienced the benefits of it, and so it's not to suggest that therapy is a bad thing. In fact, a lot of the time it's the people that reject it the most that need it the most.
Mm-hmm.
But it's let it play its part and let it be in its own piece in order to integrate so that you can move forward. You know, another kind of example of this is I have relatively spiritual views of the world and who we are as souls. And, you know, I'm not a religious person, but I do have quite a spiritual perspective of who we are and what we're doing and all that kind of stuff. Again, my observation of a lot of my really deeply spiritual and conscious friends is that sometimes they use it as an escape.
Yeah.
You know, they might start a business or start a project, and then you catch up with them 6 months later, you go, hey, how's that doing? And they, you know, oh, you know, I got into a place where it no longer felt right for me. It no longer felt like my calling. It's like, bullshit, man. It got hard and you quit. Like, that's what happened. It got hard and you quit, right? There's
100%.
Full stop.
100%.
And so it comes back to the therapy, whether it's spirituality, whether it's consciousness, whether it's personal development. How I find that it has been most constructive and useful for me is when I utilize it to help fortify me to confront life head on. I don't use it as an escape to crawl into a hole to intellectualize and ask myself existential questions.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. And again, huge parallels there. Like, I used to see my auctioneering practice as an escape. Because it used to, at one point, when I first did school and I got into it, and it was before I understood what flow state was and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And I saw that as an escape, because for the 20 minutes I'd do an auction, that'd be the only 20 minutes I'd be calm.
Yeah, yeah.
And be happy and you know, see pina coladas in my head and whatnot, right?
It's funny you say that. The same is true of me on stage.
Right.
And so if I'm going through a hard time, whether it's, you know, previous relationships that have ended, you know, I've had relationships end one night where I'm on stage the next morning at 8 a.m. kind of thing.
Yep.
Or, you know, as I said, people have passed or gotten sick or whatever it is. And it's the same for me as what you just mentioned. You know, you're probably thinking, man, I wish I didn't have an auction today, or man, I wish I wasn't on stage at 8 a.m. in the morning. But then you find that when you get on stage or when you get into your auction, it's all of a sudden you're present, right? And that also comes back to what we were saying before around put your fucking boots on and get to work.
Yep.
It's probably the last thing you feel like doing. If you went and saw your therapist, they'd probably tell you to take a mental health day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's the best thing for us, particularly if you're doing something that is enjoyable, because it gets you moving again.
It gets you moving again. You're absolutely right. And it's one of those like, I know if I'm in the depths of a bit of a cycle or whatnot, I know I need to put one foot in front of the other. Left foot, right foot.
Yes.
And start walking. And then eventually everything warms up again.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people tend to feel trapped. But then in feeling trapped, whether it is their life situation, their circumstances, their resources, whatever it is, from a business point of view, from a career point of view, golden handcuffs, for example, they can feel trapped in the golden handcuffs scenario where they want to start and do their own thing, but they're stuck because they are bound by the salary that they have become accustomed to.
Yeah.
But what I've found over the journey is the fact that over my little trip has been that without just putting one foot in front of the other and just even making it as simple as that, our own heads, geez, and the belief systems and all the noise and the stuff, like you said, that comes at us in social media and general media and whatnot. Geez, it stops so much progress from happening.
100%. And I think that step by step, you know, is for me, it's been particularly important in my hardest periods. And so, you know, I started my current business that is kind of the center of everything else that I do is called the Entourage. We're Australia's largest business coaching and growth agency for, you know, small to medium high growth businesses. Started in 2010. By 2015, we were a $60 million brand, just working with business owners, doing what we do, scaling companies. And we became a college because we had a whole bunch of parents and kind of, you know, little Jane's finishing high school next year. Can she come and, you know, be coached by the Entourage type thing? And the answer was no. We only work with business owners that have a foundation, have that foundational infrastructure in their company. And so we had a lot of demand. So it became a college so that we could address that market and help those people. Entered the space incredibly successfully. 6 months in, the government stopped paying any new entrants. And then about 12 months in, they completely changed the regulations and essentially wiped out the private training sector in Australia, particularly in the vertical of business. They were trying to push everybody back to university and TAFE, which is the last place people should go to learn anything about business. For us, we'd moved into that space so successfully and so aggressively that it meant that when they changed the regulations, front page of the newspaper one day, for us that meant we were losing about $500,000 a month. I was 3 months away from losing $800,000 a month.
Wow!
I had to go from 90 people to I think it was 30 or 40 people, and so 50 redundancies in a couple of days. Which when you have a culture like ours, we've since been listed as the 4th best place to work in Australia.
I noticed that, yeah.
When you have a culture like ours, 1 or 2 redundancies is hard. 50 is not something you ever want to do. And people will often ask me, we were, by all calculations and rationality, we were dead in the water. And it did commence the hardest 3 or 4 years of my life. We were extremely distressed as a business for about a year. But then anybody that's been in that position knows that when you're in extreme distress, you're taking on debt, you're taking on all sorts of different debt in all sorts of different forms.
Yeah.
It's going to take you years to outwork. And so we're extremely distressed for a year and climbing out of the hole for probably 3 or 4. So a very extended period of time. And particularly people that were close to the situation, understand the commercialities of it and just how distressed financially the business was, will say to me, how did you get through that? What did you do? And I'm always kind of feel like I'm giving a really underwhelming answer, because what I say is what you just said, which is I literally woke up in the morning. I said to myself, Jack, you are not going to enjoy today, but it's important that we do it. And it's like in life, the more distressed the situation, the more we'd love to just bury our head under the pillow and
100%.
wish it away. And so what's the antidote? You fully accept and understand that you're probably not going to enjoy a lot of it. If it's something that you want to do and quitting's not an option, then you get out of bed, 1 foot in front of the other. And that's how I have always overcome anything difficult in life, is left foot, right foot. It's literally as simple and as difficult as that.
I trivialized it in an online webinar that I did around the start of COVID? I can't remember. Where the title of it was "Just Put Your Underpants On." Because
right. It's the first step.
Because the first step, right? Put your jogs on.
I don't think that's trivial at all. I think that's great advice. Take the first fucking step. That's great.
Because, and I'm sure it'd be the same of the female persuasion as well, but as lads, when you put your jocks on, you feel secure. You feel all of a sudden, you feel there's a small degree of empowerment that comes with the packaging of one's bits, right? And I did a whole talk about putting your underpants on, which was interesting. But it ties in wonderfully with what you just said there. We as human beings, we can't enjoy everything forever. That is something that I think I've fallen into a little bit of a trap of quite recently, actually, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, we all do.
Where I'm trying to get this book done, and me, who spent my English GCSE counting the bricks on the gym wall as opposed to actually writing any essays.
Yeah.
This is like my Everest, right? I'd rather fucking climb Everest.
Right.
I've been struggling to keep momentum with it because of the fact that it's not been fun.
It's hard.
Interestingly, I was just walking up to the chemist just before we came into the studio, and I was chatting to my doctor, and I actually said, "Fuck, I've just not got anything that's fun at the minute." My coaching businesses and things like that. Lots of businesses are down at the minute and whatnot, and I'm like, nothing's fun at the minute.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Not every day is going to be fun.
Yeah.
And I think there's an absolute reality to that I think we try and hide from so much. There's a Dr. Christy Goodwin who was on an episode earlier on. She talks wonderfully well about the lack of stress resilience that we've got.
Yes. That's a beautiful phrase.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. And it's been a focal point of mine. And I think that you can have all the medication under the sun. Take all of the herbs, smoke all of the spicy stuff you want.
Right.
Take all those mushroom gummies, all that sort of shit.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you're gonna cop stress at some point. You're gonna be having your back against the wall at some stage.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's enough vernacular around that, particularly in business.
Yes.
But beyond.
100%. It comes back to the internet conversation we were having before is we've gotten into this intellectual and rainbows and skittles conversation around passion and purpose and all that kind of stuff. Now, again, you and I, huge proponents of passion and purpose, and hopefully can provide a little bit of example around that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is I just disagree with how it's often presented.
I couldn't agree more.
Here's the thing. Life is an identity program. And so every single day we are building our identity. And what builds our identity are the behaviors that we undertake. What builds our identity is what we do.
Yep.
Not what we think, not what we say we're going to do, not what we think we're going to do, not what we ruminate over. Our identity is built by what we do. And we spoke about before, what's our definition of high performance? It's like you will rise to the level of performance at the level at which you can tolerate its discomfort and its complexity. And the determination as to whether you will rise to that level comes down to one thing, which is, are you willing to pay that price?
Yep.
You and I both go to the gym,
yep.
Right? We can sit around here, we can talk about going to the gym, we can read about going to the gym, we can read about bench pressing, we can talk to personal trainers about bench pressing, we can go on all of the nutritional plans that we want, we can even go into the gym and look at the bench press, we can go and buy a bench press, we could buy all the fitness gears to do the bench press, right? But the muscle is built under the fucking bar.
Yep.
The muscle isn't
100%.
built by thinking about doing it. And so identity is built by what we do. And so I think that purpose, passion, therapy, all of these things that we think about are useful to the extent that they get you to do.
I couldn't agree more. I think, and I'm absolutely picking up what you're putting down here. And I think a lot of people, if you're banging down notes, and your pen should be like on fire at the minute with the volume of notes that you're taking down here. But the huge message, and I'm really glad that our chat has come along to this message, because if you go, and highly recommend that you follow Jack, of course, and his better half, Amanda, because at first you will have a similar sort of sense to me, which is young lad, because you're a good-looking young lad. You know what I mean? Like, there's lots of people that'll be like, geez, young lad like that, and he's preaching from up on high and all this sort of stuff. I can hear the commentary coming out, and I'm sure you'll have copped it from at various stages and whatnot. But the reality is, the reason why, one of the main reasons, if not the major reason why you're ahead, not of other people, but you're ahead of life, is the fact that you do.
Correct.
You're prepared to do.
Correct.
And there's lots of people that are stuck in a rut right now that just need to understand that in order to start getting yourself out of it, you need to do.
Yes.
There's no amount of vitamins and shit that's going to stop you from being in that rut.
Yes. There's no way to avoid the work. And again, it comes down to the what's the extent of your vision and what do you want to achieve. But the larger the vision and the more you want to achieve, the higher the price that's associated with it. And so you can choose not to pay the price. That's fine. But you won't attain the goal. If I don't go to the gym every day, I'm not going to have muscle growth. It's just that simple, right? And so the thing is that the doing is the hard bit. And I think it's might be the best book ever written is called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And and it's a whole book around what he calls resistance. And resistance is the voice inside your head which tries to talk you out of doing pretty much anything. It's the voice inside your head that says, don't go to the gym today, just go tomorrow. Or you don't need to start that project, or don't write the book today, or, you deserve it. We all have resistance. And the more important a project is to you, the more important a task is to you, the louder resistance will be. And so life is a daily struggle of overcoming resistance to just get to the work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Right. And to come back to what you were saying earlier, I think that we feel good when we're in our comfort zone. Right. And it's important to be in your comfort zone sometimes, because sometimes we need some respite, and a lot of the times we need rest, right? Rest is not something that's in opposition to high performance. Rest is a critical component of high performance, as you and I both learned. And so, being in your comfort zone for a few hours a week or a few hours a day is a beautiful place to be. But the growth happens when you're not in your comfort zone. And when you're not in your comfort zone, by definition, you're going to be uncomfortable. And so sometimes I think it's as simple as saying to yourself, when I am trying to strive or achieve for anything, I'm going to feel uncomfortable. I'm going to feel inadequate. I'm going to feel like an imposter. I'm going to feel like it's too difficult for me to take on, let alone win. I'm going to feel all of these things. And I just need to use your phrase, put my undies on, put the boots on, go to work.
Before I let you go, imposter syndrome, legit, or is it just an excuse? In the sense of...
I think it's legit, but probably not in the way that you're meaning. I think it's legit in that a lot of imposter syndrome is probably legitimate, meaning if you're standing on stage talking about something, the question is, are you talking about something that you have embodied and experienced and succeeded in, or just got the scars in and you can pass on some of the lessons? Or are you talking about something that you don't have a depth of experience in yet? And if you're in the latter camp, then you're going to feel imposter syndrome, and that imposter syndrome is warranted because you don't have the depth of skill or experience yet. And so you should get off stage and go do some work.
Yeah.
And come back when you feel like you are simply conveying who you are or what you've done.
Yeah. Reason why is, again, personal experience with this book. I've been using this excuse of imposter syndrome, and then it got thrown back at me as bullshit because they said, Annie, you've just penned 50,000 words. Like, how is that imposter syndrome?
Yeah, that's not easy.
And I'm like, yeah, that's an obvious one to.
There's a little bit of evidence in that.
All right, dickhead.
Way to ruin my imposter syndrome.
Exactly. Fuck you. I was clinging on to that.
Imposter syndrome is the largest form of resistance in that instance.
But you know what, though, and I'm really glad that we're gonna have a little tweak around this at the end of this episode, because, like you said, I think there's a big misunderstanding as to what imposter syndrome is. A lot of people use imposter syndrome as an excuse to not go forth with something. How can you know if something's right or wrong until you've given it a crack? Yeah,
and if someone had imposter syndrome, what I would say to them is this: imagine somebody that is talking about or writing about the subject that you want to talk about or write about. I don't mean you, Andy, because I think any imposter syndrome in your instance is highly invalid, with all due respect. But if I was speaking to somebody else, it's imagine another person and ask yourself, what would they need to have experienced or accomplished or been through in order to have authority to speak on that subject? And tell me what that is. And then do you match that? And if you match that, then get to work. And if you don't match that, then get to work.
Yeah.
Right?
Either way, do some fucking work.
Yes.
Either way, which is a wonderfully practical way to bring this to a head. I wanted to ask you very, very quickly two things. One, since becoming a father, and I asked the same question of your better half. What is one
that is
or
the
two?
accurate term, by the way.
Yeah, I know it is. 100% it is.
That wasn't the question.
Mate, I'm not that was just an assumption. Before becoming a father, what is one or two things that you've brought into your game of life that has helped you to evolve in this learning of becoming a dad?
Without sounding like a broken record, it comes down to a lot of the conversation that we've had in that if I am good at anything, it's putting myself in positions where I know I'm not going to be comfortable or capable and staying there long enough to become comfortable and capable.
Right.
And so Pandra and I went into our parenting journey with, a lot of optimism and excitement, but also understanding that you're gonna suck at first. Like you can't expect to sit down on a piano and start playing Mozart.
Mate, I was exactly the opposite. I thought I was destined to be the best dad in the world, right? And then when I very, very quickly realised that, fuck me, them onesies are like a Rubik's Cube at one stage. But you got limbs going everywhere.
Right.
I literally sat in a corner. I literally sat in a corner at one point. I was like, fuck. This is not going well.
Yes.
Fuck, I wish I knew that.
And if I may, I think this is why the expectation of things are going to be hard and I'm going to suck at first is really important, because it's that whole, your happiness is your expectation minus reality. And so if I expect myself to be brilliant and then I'm not, and I was never going to be brilliant at the beginning anyway. And so the reality isn't the problem in that equation. The problem is often with the individuals, the expectation that, I'm going to start the business and it's going to be successful in 3 months, or I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to achieve all of my goals in 3 months. And so we think that we're wrestling against reality when we're not. We're wrestling against the unfounded and naive expectations that we set up before we confronted and started to wrestle with reality.
Yeah.
Right. So to bring it back to your question around parenting, we've loved it, and it's been challenging, but we knew that. I think that there's another important piece here around perspective, which is, there's people listening to this podcast or watching this podcast right now that have wanted to have kids for a long time and haven't been able to. I've got a dear friend of mine that worked with me at the Entourage for 5 or 6 years who, they gave birth to their second son, and he passed away, minutes later type thing due to negligence and malpractice on behalf of the doctors.
Oh, wow.
And so, and I'm almost bringing that up reluctantly just because it's obviously a somber subject to touch on. But the point is this, is that when there were the sleepless nights, when there was the crying 2-month-old, when there was the mess that was everywhere, I would just say to myself, there are people that are begging for this challenge right now. There are people that would give everything to have a child that won't go to sleep right now.
Yeah.
And so for us, bringing an understanding that it was going to be challenging, but also the perspective that those challenges we're signing up for, and a lot of people would give their right arm to be as fortunate as us, I think has set us in good stead.
And I think relating that to, the practicalities of wanting to do something for yourself or anything like that, it's an incredibly harsh way to learn a lesson that if you've got the choice or the option to give something a go, don't waste it.
Yes.
Because there are so many people that would beg just to have the choice.
Yes. To
be able to give anything a crack, even if it's try and fail.
Yes.
Even if it's on a smell of an oily rag.
Yep.
Whatever. Just understand how fortunate it is that you've even got the choice.
Yes. And the opportunity. Ugh. And if we were to summarize the last 60, 70 minutes of this conversation, is exactly what you just said, which is don't waste it.
Amazing. Jack, it's been an absolute privilege, man. This conversation has flown wonderfully well. And I honestly, when it came to the agenda of this conversation with you, normally my agendas go out the window anyway. I didn't even make one pretty much with you because I was intrigued to see where the natural flow of this conversation went. The amount of value, team, that is in this episode. I know I'm going to be listening to it again. I hate listening to myself, but I'm going to listen to this one again for sure. I can't thank you enough, man.
Thanks, man.
For your time. I really appreciate it. And please don't be a stranger.
Absolutely.
And for you guys, you better follow this lad because, like, honestly, if you don't think that he's worth following now, then I don't know who is worth following after hearing the amount of truth bombs that he's just dropped on this one. So, Jack, thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Team, stay safe, healthy, happy. Enjoy the rest of whatever it is that you are doing. And make sure that you re-listen to this one because it is a goodie. Take care, team.